Hello, I'm Graham Coxon. I'm going to go through this song, Freakin' Out. First of all, I'm going to do the introduction, which is pretty much, the introduction is a verse. So the intro is the same as the verse, and it's two sections, and it's basically two different ways of playing the same chords. And the first half is dampened and quite a fuzzy guitar sound, and then the second half is a more ringier, undampened sound, but that's more like about technique. The shapes for the first half and the intro. First half with the verses and the intro is like an E, but it's an E that doesn't include any third, and the third is the note in a chord which really is playing whether it's major or minor. So an E major is like this, and an E minor is like that. But you can play an E that doesn't include a third, so you don't have to worry about being major or minor. And it's kind of like this. And that doesn't have any third. It's basically E's, loads of E's and B's, I think. I use that chord quite a lot because it's just a good way of ramming a chord the quickest route as possible, just to have an E chord that's just full of E's, really, and no other notes fiddling it around. And the riff, the verse riff and intro riff, is based around this shape, but the middle finger, it just has fingers moving around. I'll play it anyway, and then I'll look at it more closely when I'm playing it. Oh no, yeah, that just goes to an A there. But I play A's like that, because then you've got all of these fingers free to make mischief. I think Peter Townsend, from watching him play, he does A's like that. And I was sitting with acoustic guitars trying to fit all my fingers in between that fret, and then you see this bloke and he's just doing that, and you think, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I do them like that. So the intro is, I think it's just E and then to A and then B back to A. Really, really a simple chord progression, but played like this. That B, you can play it there if you want, but it just means a bit of a travel up to there. So it's just the A shape gone up and then barring it. And that's what happens during the first half of the verse and the first half of the intro. And in the second half it's the same chords, but they're just played a little more conventionally. So I do a bar, a sort of the A-shaped chord with an E up here, but I kind of, you can play it like that. I usually play it with just putting these strings here down and letting these two ring. I don't know why, I just like it ringing. So usually I just do that, which is excellent. I grew my nails especially. Yeah. So it's a bit more ringy and interesting than just sort of. And it's again, it's E to A, and then just slide that up, B, back to that, and that's the intro. So it sort of goes like this. I notice I'm doing a little skip there. On the A, sort of those things that you do without really knowing you do it. So it sort of goes like a little gallop, you know. It's kind of coming up to a bit of a fence and he has a little, you know, you've got to get your footing right for the next move, so. And that's the intro and the verse. Well, the first half of the intro and the first half of the verse are the same, and they are dampened pretty much as hard as you can. And that's just this bit of the hand, just there. I mean, you can dampen really a lot by just putting them right on the string, but usually I put it just on the bridge. I think that's the bridge. Like that. And from listening to punk and the Cars and things like that, they use a nice sort of tone that sort of goes like that, so I quite enjoy that sound. So really you're going from that for the first half of the verse and intro, and then when you start doing the same chords up here for the second half of the intro and the verse, you just hit it as hard as you can, really. Like that. How that gets into the verse, two things happen. There's a sort of a chord setup and also a lead part. So I'll do the chord setup, and you're going from the last E, and you go to a B, and then it's a normal E, about that ringy E, to a B, which is a normal E-shaped bar chord. You can just go up to C, normally C. But what I did was I let all these ugly sort of tones come through, which I quite, by leaving these three ringing, so you get that. And that's sort of a roundabout way of getting from a verse to a chorus. So it sort of goes. So it goes up to the D, the B, and then slings itself into the biggest E you can muster, which is probably the ringy one up here. And then you're into the chorus. But there's a lead part that goes over that as well. So if you imagine this is happening underneath. This goes over the top. Like that, over the top of it, which is just these two notes here together, and then up to that, and then you bend this up and go, and give it a little wiggle at the end, and then you're into the chorus as well. So that goes over the top of that. You need quite a lot of fuzz for those notes to sort of come out satisfactorily. Because if you don't use any fuzz, it's kind of a bit. It still works, but it's not quite as exciting. Doesn't quite satisfy the need for fuzz. And then the chorus is like back to that big E. But there's some movement within the chord, which basically is from the middle, this little finger here, and it's just following the melody of the chorus, the vocal melody, and it's going. So it sort of goes. I do an A in that similar way as I'm doing the E. I'm leaving this A string to ring. These are the kind of cack-handed ways you kind of figure out how to play things if no one tells you how to do it. You kind of just use your thumb and your nose and whatever is available. So I usually hold that A with my thumb, have the next one ringing on its own, and then just put those three there. So then I go up to the A, but this is a B, and that's you put a suspended fourth in that, which is again going with the vocal melody, and it goes and then to a G. So that is the first bit of the chorus is. And then it's a C and an E flat. But I like to do the C with the like this in a kind of a ham-fisted way, bringing out the G underneath it, and gives it a thicker bottom end to the chord. So I don't really usually allow bass players any responsibility. I like to make it heavy in the bottom end occasionally because they might not be concentrating to do it. So I have a G in the bottom with that C, and then I just slide it all up to there, which is an E flat, and then it has this B flat up in the bottom there. So it sounds a bit, it sounds a bit horrible, but it just makes it thicker and a little more unusual. So that goes from the G. Goes round twice, and on the last time I don't go up to this E, I go down to a normal E down here because there's a sort of a lead part coming out of the chorus, and that's a sort of bringing in some sort of rocktastic cliche that people don't seem to ever get tired of, and it's a kind of a bit-a-little thing, like using hammer-ons and things like that. So it sort of does that at the end of the chorus. It's just a little bit of, there's an E going on, so E's a good key to show off. So you do a bit of bit-a-little, it doesn't really matter what you do, you just have fun for a few bars, when the E is happening. So the chorus sort of goes like this. And then you're back to calming it down for the first half of the next verse. Yeah, hammer-ons, it's a bit like that, and Hendrix did it such a lot, and the thing to do is probably watch Jimi Hendrix at the Monterey Pop film. And he did it loads. He would do that for a while he'd point out a nice looking girl in the audience and give her a little wink. No, it's a kind of he'd use it in a really cool way, because he would do it to attract attention, and then he would sort of deliver the power like he's tickling, and then he would deliver his tickle to a girl and give her a thrill. So it's a kind of like a weird tickle, and it's just like, I suppose you have to get used to the idea of slapping your finger on there and sort of bending it. It's a banjo, it's a banjo thing, really. It's not a rock thing at all. That's what banjo players do, constantly. If you notice, to manage to get the pull off and to release the string, I'm bending it just a little bit to give me the leverage to let go of it. I mean, you can do it like that, but it doesn't quite have the power when you release the string. So if you bend it out, it kind of bedoings it. And loads of people do that, don't they? That's just being daft. But so there's loads of that. It doesn't really work. You have to sort of... It's kind of faux blues, you know. I'm quite fond of the blues. And one day I'll be in a blues band when I put on another for a few years and pounds. And actually underneath that I think there's some other kind of blues sort of cliche going on. I quite like using cliches, but kind of underneath there you can hear this thing going on which is a bit like this, which is a really, really kind of cliched, but it was all the rage in the late 60s. Gets your knickers in a twist a bit. Anyway, that's what's happening there, and so that's the verses and the choruses. There is another section apart from that, which is underneath the guitar solo, and I think it's after the second chorus. There's a few of those, and then it goes. Is it there or is it? No, it's a D and an A chord and a B, and that sort of kicks off the opportunity to do more diddle-diddle-diddles. I decided that the guitar solos were all right, and even blues-inspired guitar solos. When listening to New Wave and all that sort of stuff, you realise there was some pretty nifty guitar players like him out of Cars. People like Glenn Tilbrook, you know, really, that played some really nice guitar solos, and shouldn't really be ashamed of it. Because now, well, you know, quite a few people are playing that sort of thing. Like the Datsuns were doing it, and Mr. Whitestripe. They kind of they slap a bit of blues in your face whenever they get the opportunity. So I think it's a very kind of a great music to play, not necessarily for anybody else to listen to you, but I imagine that a lot of I think it's a really neat form of music. But there you go. It's 2008, and people get cynical about things. So this guitar solo is kind of bluesish. It's not really. It's a bit discordant, but it is under a chord progression which is D A to B, I think. And then an E for 2 bars. And that's what it does underneath the guitar solo. And then it goes down to a sort of an intro section again. Which has something over the top, which is similar to the moving two notes that are moving around just before chorus is kicking. It has a slight variation on that during this section just after the solo, and it's sort of something like this. And then it goes. One of those again into the last load of choruses, and that's just about everything that happens in that song. Okay, so I think I've gone over all of the sections. I didn't tell you how to play the solo, but I mean, I could play it quickly, but what I was going to do was just play everything, so you just see the shape of the song and how it all goes into one. So I'll do that, and it just starts again with this thirdless E. Yeah, that was Freakin' Out. I hope it made sense. Anybody starting out, you're bloody lucky to have all stuff like this. And really
bloody have it restarted, bloody hell.
I hope you can soon be playing that if you like.
Nothing to see, nothing to hear, nothing to be, nothing to fear, nothing to prove, nothing to say, nothing to lose, nothing to gain, nothing to feel, nothing to hate, nothing is real, it's all too late. What do you do when nothing's wrong? Ain't got a clue, ain't got no song. Yeah, I'm in at the mouth. Yeah, I'm mad without a doubt. 'Cause I'm really freaking out. And I'm going out of my mind. TV got me going blind. And I'm really freaking out. Hey man, you think you got it made? Proving you stink on your fan base. Got on your aviator shades. Yeah man, you're looking really ace. So what the hell you doing here? Filling the space between my ears. Why don't you all just disappear? The price of your friends is way too dear. Yeah, I'm foaming at the mouth. Yeah, I'm mad without a doubt. 'Cause I'm really freaking out. And I'm going out of my mind. TV got me going blind. 'Cause I'm really freaking out. Nothing to see, nothing to hear, nothing to be.